Welcome back to the Intravenous 2 level editor tutorial. In this video, I will go over the various methods you can influence both the stealth gameplay on your level and the combat gameplay on your level. So let's start with the NPCs. In the previous video, we placed these two NPCs and we set up a patrol path for the NPC outside. However, Intravenous 2 does not have any functionality for instructing the AI what to do on the level outside of their predisposed tasks. This was a deliberate choice to make levels both predictable and unpredictable, in the sense that any particular area in a level can be set up by the level creator to have some particular challenge. And if the AI was capable of picking what to do without any influence from the level editor themselves, that would lead to unpredictable gameplay and would ruin the intended challenge of the level. However, when the AI becomes alerted, there are several things you need to know in regards to making levels to make them behave the way you want them to. Let me show you what I mean when I say that they don't do anything that you don't instruct them to do. I will place myself on the game world and I will alert the enemy. Now that they've gone in combat, I will hide. They will look for me, and once they're done looking for me, they will stop and do nothing. That is because in the previous video tutorial, we did not set up any hints for the AI on what to do in case of, for example, combat and when they're in alert and things like that. So let's take care of that. The first thing we want to do when we get back into the level editing mode is to switch over to the tile grid objects mode. Here we will cycle all the way through until we reach the object class cover point. This object class hints to the AI where they can take cover. The game does not have any algorithm for setting these up in advance, and this was also a deliberate choice to let the creator of the level be a lot more deliberate with where he wants the AI to take cover. Usually, when I make levels, I set the cover points up like so. When you set up the cover points, you have to keep in mind the geometry of the level. You have to make sure that the cover points are, for example, not inside walls or other objects that are solid. If you do that, the AI will not be able to pathfind to those cover points, and they will either fail to walk altogether or they will discard these points from their points that they can hide behind. So let's set up some more of these. Now, the methodology I use for setting up the cover points is fairly simple. I look at an obstacle of some kind, for example this one, right? And this cover point therefore provides cover if the player is, for example, here or here. This cover point therefore provides cover from the player if he was here or here. This cover point provides cover from the player if he was, for example, here or here. That's the logic for all these cover points. I visualize what I'm trying to hide the NPC from when I place any of them, and I place them accordingly. Try to give the cover points some space away from the geometry so that they don't get too close and, for example, run themselves into the wall and get sort of stuck, if that makes sense. Since we're going to be changing the geometry of this level anyway, since it's still a work in progress, placing some of them can be redundant. That's why I always leave the cover point placement more or less to when the level is finished. I still need to test the levels, so I'll place them as I'm done more or less finalizing the layout of the level, but ultimately you should not rush to place these ahead of time, as there can be many changes done to the level's layout, and anytime you change the geometry you will need to adjust the position of your cover points accordingly. Now, in order to test whether these cover points work or not, let's place a couple of more NPCs. We will either remove or move these NPCs altogether later. Let's give them all a pistol. We don't need to give them anything fancy, really. This is all purely for the purpose of testing to see whether everything's working fine. Now that we have the new NPCs placed, let's just save the level just in case and place ourselves in the game world. Make some noise and hide. And now we will observe as the AI will no longer mass on us as much, but for example, this guy took cover here. Okay, we've set up cover points, but the AI still does nothing when it exits combat. What do we do about that? That's where points of interest come into play. Once we return to the editing mode, we will go into the tile grid objects mode and move over all the way until we reach the point of interest class object. This class object, as it states here, when NPCs are permanently alert, they will use these points to patrol and search for the player. Usually I try to space them out somewhat fairly, like so. Placing these points too close to each other can result in the AI, for example, taking too many baby steps to look for the player. For example, they might go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then here. There's a cooldown for each of the points once they're done searching for the player at all of these particular points, but if you place them too close and too many of them, they might get stuck in one place because they'll be basically cycling through the closest points possible. Let's try this out and see how it looks. We also want some kind of place for the player to hide in so that we can observe the AI work. For that, I will simply place a closet out of view so that once they start searching for me, they will simply not know where to look for me. Save the level one more time. Spawn into the game world. Fire off a shot. And hide. As you can see, the scene played out mostly the same, but now that we have points of interest set up, the AI will begin searching for the player. The decision to have the player manually place down points of interest was also a deliberate choice to let the level creator be in more precise control of where the AI can go when they're looking for the player and where they can't go. For example, we might have this building over here, right? But we don't want the AI to go here when they're alert. Either because we, as the game's creator, assume that this room can be easily used to cheese the enemy AI and knock all of them out very easily, or for some other reason. Maybe we want some kind of room that's like a safe space for the player in case everybody's alert. There are many reasons why we want to be in control of hinting the AI where they can go to and where they can't go to. That's why there is no algorithm in place which automatically places the points of interest. It's up to the level creator to determine the flow of the level. Okay, now that we've tested the cover points and the points of interest, we can see exactly what kind of impact it has on the gameplay. These are two very important classes for any level, and for example, if I were to remove all of the cover point class objects, what would happen when combat starts is they will all mass on the player because they don't know which points on the level they can use as cover. Let me show you. Now you will see that they all mass to the same position. Nobody takes cover, nobody tries to space themselves out. They're all just looking for a cover point. They're all just massing in one position. Okay, since we don't need the cover points at this point yet, because we will still be changing the geometry and the layout of the level, we can safely move on to another part of making the level. For this particular purpose, I want to have another building here. I want to have another building for gameplay and for stealth purposes. And I will make this building using the walls mode, using the floors mode, and decorate it with the object placement mode. I don't want anything fancy right now, but what I do want is some kind of control around this building, yet another reward for the player, and also a couple of alternative ways of getting inside the building. For this particular reason, I will create an opening here for a door. I will lead the sidewalk to the entrance of this building. I will clean up the floors here since they're messing up the blending. And I will place a door. Now that we have the door, we need some kind of tile inside. Let's pick something simple. In this case, I want this to be some kind of office building. I also want to place the roof light obstructors so that it's dark inside and light does not bleed to the interiors. Next, as a small stealth challenge for the player, let's make a separate room which has yet another locked door, like so. Let's make it locked, and let's make this one locked also. This is where the reward will be for getting inside. However, let's add a twist. Let's add two glass windows that can be broken to get inside if we don't want to play around with these doors here. Also, additionally, let's extend the wall here a little bit and add a vent shaft by switching to the ventilation shaft setup mode and creating a new vent shaft. We press N to create a new vent shaft, and we simply place the points which it leads to. Then we finish P to finish it, and that's done. Now that we have a vent shaft itself, this does not mean that we can simply get inside and get out. We need points to interact with this vent shaft, which is why we once more switch to the target objects mode and go all the way back until we reach the vent entry class object. Now, we want to place this vent shaft right next to the wall. We do not want to place it into the wall, as we cannot interact with objects that are inside geometry higher than what the object itself is. So, we've placed two vent shafts. However, this still does not mean that we can interact with this vent shaft. We need to assign the vent shaft that we want these vent shafts to be in charge of. Now that we have assigned the vent shafts themselves, these vent shafts don't really look that much different from the wall and can be difficult to discern from the rest of the world geometry. That's why we will once more switch to the target objects placement mode, go all the way back to map decor, enter vent into the search box here, and place a ventilation shaft cover. This signals to the player, at least in some slight visual way, that there's a vent shaft they can interact with here. With the way the levels of the first and second Intravenous campaigns are set up, when people see this sprite, they know exactly what it means. Now that we have a vent shaft, we might want to avoid placing lots of various obstacles such as walls and the map _ obstacle class objects, because those can interfere with the AI. The vent shafts themselves automatically build a list of points the AI can use to position around the vent shaft if the AI sees the player get inside a vent shaft. This is used specifically for making the AI camp vent shafts, again, if they saw the player get inside. For the purpose of decorating this space, we will once more go into the tile-grid objects placement mode, switch over to the maps _ obstacle class, enter table into the search box, and place a couple of office tables. Now that I've placed these tables, I want not only the exterior to pose itself a stealth challenge, but also the interior, which is where light play will come in. First, I want to section off these tables with a cubicle wall that the player can use to hide behind. Now that I have the cubicles in place, I know that they are pretty tall and will block light. That is why I will compute the static lighting once more so that I have an idea of how dark it is inside, switch over to the tile-grid objects placement mode once more, then go all the way back to ceiling _ lamp, set the radius to 180, switch the color to cold, actually I'll set it to 160, and I will do the following. I will place one lamp here, right by the wall, and another lamp here on the other side of the office. The lamps might be placed, but the light casters themselves are always centered on the sprite. However, if a light caster object is positioned inside wall geometry, it will not be able to compute the static light properly, and the dynamic lighting might glitch out because it's inside of geometry. That's why after we place lamps that are very close to walls, we go all the way to omni _ lightcaster class objects, and we move them away from the wall like so. You can use the 2x2 placement range to more accurately place them right by the wall. Once more, if these light casters are positioned inside walls, they will fail to properly calculate static lighting, which is why you want them to be positioned by the wall or by geometry, not inside of very tall geometry. Now that we've placed the lights themselves, it's still kind of dim, but that's because we have not yet computed the static lighting. So we once more go into map settings and click compute lighting. Now it's a lot brighter indoors, which is what we want. We can also see some static light bleeding inside here. And if we were to crank up the radius of the light on this caster, there will be even more indirect lighting bouncing in here. But we don't want that because there's going to be a separate light caster in this room. We save the level once more and we check how dark it is here. Okay, it's pretty much pitch black, which is something I don't want to happen. I want there to be at least some light, which is why I will increase the radius of the light to 180 on both of these. Once I've increased the radius, I compute the lighting once again and check how dark it is here. Now there is some light, but not pitch black. Now, this office space on its own does not provide much of a stealth challenge, which is why I will place an opened window here and a regular window here. With these two windows, we can easily set up a patrol route for the AI. We switch over to patrol path setup once more, click on N on the keyboard, and set a patrol path here and here. I will make the AI look downwards by setting the look angle to 90 once again, but this time he will look down for 10 seconds. Here, he will look outside the window at the angle 180 degrees for 5 seconds. Once that's done, I click P and I save it as office. However, because this patrol path is not circular, we need to edit it a little bit. We need to set the reverse look angle to be identical to what it is on the regular look angle. As you can see, you can control each of these individually, and it shows where the AI will be looking at, depending on whether the AI is going forward or backwards. Now that I'm done, I save the patrol path and I place a new NPC. To do that, I once again go into the NPC placement mode, press F1, right click, give him a visual of, for example, motor, set his experience level to experienced, and give him a shotgun. Now that the NPC is in place, I must not forget to go into the patrol path setup and click on assign NPC to route. This will be Goon U7. Now that he's assigned, he will patrol this particular route, and we can think of ways to make this patrol route more challenging, as well as maybe even decide on what the reward for finishing the stealth challenge is going to be. However, just having these tables here with cubicles does not really give the impression that this is an office. That's why I will once more switch to the tile grid objects placement mode, go to the map decor class, and first of all, I'll place a couple of chairs. Map decor is like an obstacle, but it does not have any physical properties. It does not stop light or prevent movement. And I use this specific class for chairs because in my experience, after having made Intravenous 1, it's very annoying to have small geometry like chairs prevent you from moving. In most cases, if a chair is placed next to a table, that means it's going to be overlapping with it too and being rendered underneath it, which means that there's no reason to make these chairs have any physical properties, as they just make movement more difficult without any meaningful impact on gameplay. Now that the chairs are in place, I will place a couple of monitors. And now that the keyboards are placed, I just noticed that there's a missing monitor here. This is where the G function, the G key, comes into play. By hovering your mouse over any object in the world, you can press G to select the sprite that you wish to set to the current one. This is a convenience function so that you, for example, don't have to delete keyboard, enter monitor again, and select the sprite you want to use. This can be quite annoying and time consuming, so sometimes it's easier to just, for example, if I wish to place another table here, I just hover over a table sprite, press G, and place it. Likewise, since I need to place a keyboard here, I do not need to enter a keyboard into the search box here again. I simply hover my mouse over a keyboard and press G. I want to give some of the people who work in this office a bit of character, which is why I will switch over to the pizza class and place a pizza. A pizza is sort of a joke class. The only thing it really does is give the player 1 health point when used. So it's not supposed to be anything serious, it's there more as a joke since the days of Intravenous 1. Now that we have a little bit of character with the tables themselves, let's look at ways we can make this look better. Right now it's pretty stale. There's a couple of tables, a floor, not much else. That's where additional decorations come into play. In this case, what kind of office is it if there are no water coolers? So we place another map underscore obstacle class with the cooler sprite here, maybe a photo cup here, and we will place it here by the wall. We don't have a whole lot of space left, but we also need to consider that the player should be able to hide here in shade from the patrol. Let's see if it's still possible. Yes, it is. Excellent. We also place a cabinet. Keep in mind, this is going to be an opened cabinet sprite, but it's going to be a map underscore decor. Once again, there are certain sprites which you would expect to be able to collide with, but I don't make them obstacle type objects specifically to make movement around the levels a bit more comfortable. However, there is one thing that I believe could be improved, and that is to change the sprite of the interior door to one that looks more like an office door. I consider these doors to be exterior doors and these doors to be interior doors. Okay, so we've got the office with a stealth challenge with this patrol here. We've got this office, which is supposed to be the office which has a reward. Let's make it a little easier for the player. Let's place a closet in here. With a closet, the player has a way to hide from enemies without turning off the lights and alerting everyone. Speaking of turning off the lights, in the previous video we placed a light source, but we did not provide a way to control the light itself. So let's fix that. In order to give both the AI and the player the ability to manipulate lights, we once more switch to the tilegrid objects placement mode, navigate all the way to the light switch class object, rotate it, and place it somewhere indoors. The game does not build rooms. The game has no interpretation of what a room is, so when we place a light switch, we need to determine which lights it controls. In order to do that, you simply right-click on the light switch, click on the Enter Click to Add mode by clicking on this button here, and then you simply drag an area over the lamps you want to add or remove to the light switch. We will repeat this process with the office down here too. It doesn't matter where a light switch is placed. What matters is that it's not blocked for the AI to pathfind to. Since we don't have a whole lot of space here, I will simply place a light switch by this window. We can pretend that it's placed underneath the window itself. Now, on its own, the stealth challenge is pretty basic. We either go in through the window and knock the guard out, but be careful not to get spotted, or we break the window and shoot him there, or we get in through the vent shaft. It doesn't really matter. But by all accounts, this is a pretty simple stealth challenge, so we want to make it a little bit more difficult. And for that, we will do the following. First of all, we will place one more light source by the entrance. Now that that's in place, we want to have some kind of patrol. There is one patrol here already, but there's no patrol here. So getting in through the window here is very easy. We want there to be some kind of challenge to walking behind this building, which is why we will place another patrol route here. The patrol route will start here, very conveniently next to the vent shafts. It will go here, and then it will, for example, end here. Let's call it office outside. Now let's reuse one of the placed NPCs we have placed up here. And we will assign this goon to this route. There you go. We don't really need any of these NPCs that we've placed, so we can either remove them by clicking on the remove button or by hovering over them and pressing the delete key on the keyboard. I have gone ahead and slightly modified the rest of the area around the building and placed the player spawn here. When placing a player spawn anywhere on the level, we want to make sure that he will not be detected by any of the NPCs present on the level. If the player is in danger of being detected and attacked by the AI without taking a single step from the starting area, that is fairly poor level design, which is why I made sure that he will not be detected by placing these walls here. Additionally, this is still a fairly simple and easy level. We might want to have some kind of backup system, but without placing a bunch of patrols and therefore making the whole level a lot more difficult. That is where these so-called backup rooms, as I like to refer to them, come into play. So, the idea is that this room will house several goons that are not going to be patrolling anywhere. They're going to remain within this room as long as everything is okay. We do not want to make this room a box with no other entrances aside from the door, because we might actually want to take these guys out while they're still here, if that's the way we want to play. That's why in the back of this building I have placed 2 windows, but the goons themselves will be seated here facing towards the door. That way we can sneak around the building and sneak anywhere around it really without being detected, but the moment there is gunfire outside, they will hear it and will come running. So let's start with giving them a seat. For the purpose of making them sit on something, we need to go into this tilegrid objects placement mode and switch to the sittable_object class. There are many sofa models or sprites or whatever you wish to call them, but for the purpose of this video, we will place several segments of sofas for them to sit on. Okay, we finished up the sofas, but in order for the AI to be able to sit down and get up, there must not be any obstacles in front of them, which is why I will be avoiding placing anything here that isn't related to the sofas. However, I still want to give the player some cover in this room, as he is unable to leave through the windows and there's only one way out. That is why I will switch to the walls placement mode, and I will place this pillar right here in the middle. This provides the player with enough cover in case enemies come running in, and he can maneuver around this wall here, this column, during combat. It should also be plenty of space for the AI to pathfind, so it should not block them from finding their way to sit down on the sofa either. Now, we have the room, we have the sofas, the only thing we're missing are the NPCs themselves. So let's place a couple of goons. Let's make them experienced. If we set these guys off, they're going to be dangerous. If we don't, well, stealth is easier. One of them is going to be a bullet hose. One of them is going to be a shotgun wielder. Another one of them is going to have a pistol. And the last one, arguably the most dangerous one, will have an AR-15. Now that we have set them up, they will not automatically sit down on the sofas either. We need to define what they do. That's why, first of all, I will move them closer to the sofas to know which of them is supposed to sit where. And in order to make them sit on the sofas, I simply right-click on the goon, I navigate to the Interact Object ID, and I set it to Settable Object. Settable Object 2, Settable Object 3, and Settable Object 4. Let's make this building a little bit nicer by placing a light here. Since the player might go into this room voluntarily, we want to give some kind of reward for actually clearing the enemies in this room, or at least distracting them to get them out of the room and then be able to go inside. That is why I will place another table here, away from the sofa so that their pathfinding isn't impacted in a bad way. I will place a toolbox here also to give some context as to why there is a weapon on the table in the first place. What we have done here is we've placed an HS-2000 that has a suppressor on it. We also need to place some ammo next to it. Let's make it subsonic for the purpose of making it useful for stealth. This table with just a pistol looks a little bit barren, so let's improve that by placing a toolbox on the table itself. Now it's looking a lot more convincing, but we still can do better in terms of the decor. Now that that's all in place, we simply compute the lighting once more. And it looks pretty nice. If you wish to make the place look a bit more lived in, what you can do is you can cycle the tiles. For several tile sets, there are tiles which look worn. For example, for this tile set, there's this one, which shows a little bit of wear and tear. Additionally, sometimes a different wear and tear tile set might not be enough, and we want to highlight just how dirty a place is. That's why we once more switch to the tile grid objects placement mode, navigate to the map_decal class. The bottom value is the alpha, or how transparent or opaque the sprite is going to be. And we place a couple of stains, for example, here, here, and maybe on the carpet. Now it looks a lot more lived in and dirty. Maybe even too dirty for these guys. I don't know. Now let's check whether they sit down good. All good? So now that that's done, it gives us some kind of reason to stay stealthy. And if anybody of the NPCs fires off an unsuppressed weapon, which they all have, by the way, these guys will come running. Here's an example. You want to avoid that. Now let's finish this office that we worked on so hard. Let's place a money pickup worth 500 once more. Let's set it pickup type to compromising material and find a laptop sprite for it. This guy has both a laptop and a computer. I don't know why he needs both of these, but let's not ask any questions. So let's see if this stealth challenge works. For the purpose of this challenge, it will also only have an HSR EMP. The guard is passing by. This guy is now watching the window. While this guy is going to that point, he will look for 10 seconds and then he will go back. So he goes there, we get inside, and now we have just enough time to lockpick the door, but we did not give the player the ability to actually lockpick doors. In order to fix this, we go into Map Settings, scroll down, and in the Player Capabilities category, we click on Lockpicking and Night Vision Goggles, since that's a staple in the Intravenous games. He goes in. We also go in, we'll lockpick the door. 5 seconds is just enough to finish lockpicking the door and get inside. We're right on time. We'll grab the compromising material. We wait for the goon to move there. We hide here. We eat some pizza. The goon leaves to check the window. And we get out. And it works. We did not use a single tool. We only lockpicked the door without alerting anybody. And we got the money reward for completing the stealth challenge. We could have also just as easily used the vent shaft here, and that would have given us a completely different way to go through this challenge. Like so. That's it for this video tutorial. Hopefully this has been useful. The level is getting bigger and bigger with each of these tutorials being released. And once I'm done with the series altogether, I will be releasing this entire level as a downloadable level for you to play around with to see how things are set up, and so on and so forth. Thanks for watching. Until next time.